one thing that I realize is that people sometimes just don't take it serious.
Well, we'll worry about it when it happens.
That's right.
When it,
That's right. And then you're like,
and then it's
what's
happening.
happening? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
happening. Well, people don't realize what happens if the ATMs don't work, or
Mm-hmm.
what happens if you don't have internet. A lot of people believe that just because they live in Corpus Christi, it's been federally cared, there's been evacuation, they can just come right back to their homes. You have to have a specific card that's prepared through TDM. You have to have a permit to get back into the area.
Welcome to United We Podcast, the official podcast of the United Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce, the only chamber podcast in South Texas. I'm your host, Al Ariola Jr., and we're here to explore the latest business insights, community stories, and opportunities shaping the coastal bend. Whether you're a business owner or just passionate about our region, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, Chamber family and friends, to United We Podcast. Today we are joined by Alex Garcia. He is chair of the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group.
Correct.
I got that right?
Yes, you did.
How are you doing, Alex?
Doing well yourself?
I'm good, man. Thank you for joining us today. We're trying to get ahead of hurricane season and spread the word of preparedness, and in the event that something does happen, recovery. I think you're certainly well versed in that. I think your leadership as chair shows that. So I think let's start with the audience getting to know the group itself and the composition of the group and what's it all about.
Well, part of it came into existence well before Hurricane Harvey, and what we realized is that when there's a disaster in a community, sometimes there's people in the outside world that want to assist. They have certain mandates about how they want their dollars to be used. And you have to have a nonprofit organization that's in good standing in order for them to be able to donate those dollars to make sure that what their intention was fulfilled. And that's kind of what we did. Then when Hurricane Harvey hit, the group came back together. Of course, there was a huge disaster over a large territorial area, and people wanted to assist. Part of what we are as a disaster recovery group, it's not being on the front end. It's being on the back end, because what happens, no matter what the nonprofit organizations out there, they move on to the next disaster. Well, that leaves a community in need of who is helping the community to continue to fulfill the needs of those that received the devastation. And so that's kind of what we did.
Well, and you brought up resources, right, that they come and making sure that they get used properly. But I'm assuming when people want to help, it's not just the local level. It becomes state, federal, all kinds of different folks that want to end up helping out.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is that as in part of our charter, as far as our mission, is that when it becomes a federally declared disaster is when we kind of activate. So what we've learned is that that's when we're able to do our best work is after it's been federally declared. Because if we do it before that, there's not enough resources, there's not enough manpower for us to be able to do that. So what we started is setting up, we work with different nonprofit organizations such as the Mennonites, where then we'll reach out to them, say, hey, what can we do? South Texas Baptist Men, how can we assist? Sometimes they want to feed people. And so we work out those dynamics. At the end is that as additional individuals began donating dollars, they said, how can I get your community back on its feet? By this time, after the disasters originally passed, it's about starting doing assessments. What community needs us? Who got hit the worst? Who needs us the quickly? And let's see how we can respond.
Well, you mentioned federally declared emergency. FEMA, I think we've always had that love-hate relationship with it a little bit. Bureaucracy is challenging. I don't know if you want to go there, but it sounds like it's getting even more challenging.
My fear is that we kind of have a structure in place. We know it's a little challenging. We know the issues internally, but at the end of the day, it's really our big brother. It's somebody who's helping, overseeing us to a certain degree. I worry if it gets challenged the way it is, because then who's going to assist us?
Yeah.
We're not a large enough community sometimes to get the attention like the Houstons or Dallas or Fort Worth of or New Yorks of the world.
Sure.
So because we're such a smaller community, our devastation may be just as bad, but we may not get the attention that's necessary.
And when funds do trickle in, I guess within the appropriate timeline, what typically have you seen has been the biggest use or need?
Everybody's a little different because it just depends on the devastation in the community. Some need roofs, so then we may reach out to another nonprofit organization who kind of focuses on that. Some may need flooring. Some may say, hey, I just need housing. Or some may say, I need food. And so we try to work with the other nonprofit organizations to be able to work together to see how can we provide the services that are necessary. We can't be
The
everything for everyone,
right?
but we try our best to be able to give that. But perfect example, I will tell you during Hurricane Harvey, the one thing that I'm very proud of this group is that keep in mind we've got commissioners on the group, we've got a lot of emergency managers, we've got TDM that's represented on the group, we've got some community volunteers, and it's not about when they volunteer, it's about people that are willing to stand up and say, I'm here. As an example, if something were to happen, the way that with the makeup of our organization is that because I've got emergency managers, they have to take care of their employers first, and that we understand. So my role then as a volunteer is to be able to step up to the plate, and say, how can I help? Where can I fit in? And then be sure and communicate that information back because there's so many municipalities that are involved in our jurisdiction.
Well, and back to we're talking a lot about when, right? If and when. I guess, do you guys have any education regarding preparedness as well?
We do. One of the things that we've done is that we try to say, how can we educate? But usually what happens is in organizations, for example, the Red Cross, they actually do a lot of preparedness. The question is that how do you get the individual's attention to understand preparedness is something that we all need to be aware of.
Right.
Having been with the Red Cross before as disaster program manager, one thing that I realize is that people sometimes just don't take it serious.
Right.
My biggest fear.
Well, we'll worry about it when it happens.
That's right.
When
That's right. And then you're like,
And then it's happening.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
happening. And unfortunately, perfect example, insurance. Well, better have your insurance in place before the hurricane is in the Gulf, because if not, you're not going to get insurance. But in addition to that, is it making sure that you've got, for example, people don't realize what happens if the ATMs don't work, or what happens if you don't have internet? How are you going to survive? How are you going to buy food? These small mom and pop stores may be out there being able to help and provide food, but they want to be compensated. Well, how are you going to compensate if you don't have the old stuff, what we now call money,
Right.
Cash money in your pocket? So it's a matter of preparation. And then once a disaster happens, should you elect to leave the community, is what does it take to come back? A lot of people believe that just because they live in Corpus Christi, if been federally cared, there's been evacuation, they can just come right back to their homes. That's not the case. People need to understand sometimes you have to have a specific a card that's prepared through TDM that allows you to get back, or permission. As a perfect example, in the different jurisdictions, you have to have a permit to get back into the area. When I was at the Red Cross, we made sure that the county judge, who is the emergency manager for the county, was able to prepare us or give us the necessary documentation to bring individuals back into the community.
Oh, and I'm assuming a lot of that tied to the infrastructure is just not there for someone to get to where they need to get.
Well, you're trying to keep people. The last thing you want to do is put individuals in harm's way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when they come back, they're devastated. They might have lost half of their belongings, and so it's emotional. And then, but somebody else may need something else. It could be life threatening. And so we want to be sure and focus where we need to. We understand that everybody wants to see their assets and get back to where they were, but we as a community are trying to get back on our feet.
What have you kind of observed that has been the biggest shortfall, or where people are maybe not prepared, like the?
Well, perfect example. If you don't prepare, your personal documents. For instance, if you need your birth certificate, if you need your passport, you need your driver's license. All that stuff should be secured somewhere where you've got it with you. And then, in most cases, people nowadays do have water, so I'm not as concerned about water. But sometimes, when we say be sure and have enough essentials for a 2-week period of time, people see essentials differently than others. What's going to be the basic you need to get in, and think about it. What if, some people go out and they buy cold cuts? Well, the reality is that if you're going to put it in an ice chest, the ice is going to run out. If you don't have electricity, how are you going to keep it cold? So then what are you going to do? So when you ask them to put a little logic, sometimes it's about canned products. And if it's canned goods you're buying, can you open up the canned goods? Can you make it available to your family? And then how do you keep them safe? And then, so many people don't quite realize when the weather gets bad, when we get a storm come through and then the heat comes in, we start getting mosquitoes. Are you prepared? Because they can get ugly. And
Right.
if your house is hot, You want windows open.
I bet. Well, and you talked about essentials. Let's have fun with that, though. What are essentials you would have to have? Not, and I don't want not the serious ones. We can go over the serious ones, but what like Alex, you need to have it, or else Alex is not going to be a happy guy.
I need to feel sure that I've got my cash in hand.
Cash money, okay.
It's always
money
cash
makes you
because
happy.
money makes me happy because at the end of the day, you may want to sell me something and I may want to buy it and I need it to feel good because we hit the disaster. So what is it going to take, And then the other thing is making absolutely sure my family's safe.
Sure.
At the end of the day, communication, there's a disaster and let's say it hit the valley all the way up to Corpus, and then I've got loved ones in the valley. How do I know they're okay?
Right.
There's not, we've got nonprofits that are trying to do their best, but sometimes there are tools out there today that people don't utilize, such as Steer, which allows seniors to register in case they're in need of getting out of their jurisdiction, and they will pick them up and get them out of there. But
good.
they've got to be registered. If they're not, we have our issues.
Well, and you talked about essentials. So I imagine you mentioned water, toiletries, radio. I know I have a radio just in case.
Gotta have batteries.
Batteries. Big one nowadays I'm thinking is those charger packs in case you do need cell phone network is intact that you can stay charged up. Any other fun ones?
Basically, and be sure that your documents that you're going to need
are water secured.
Water secured, and that you've got them in the sense of water secured. Make sure you know where they're at.
Sure.
People are going to need a driver's license. People will need all that. And what about your insurance policies? Because sometimes you're saying, well, yeah, but I'm covered. Well, let's review that first. So now's the time to be reviewing those documents.
And I guess looking through the lens here now, Chamber of Commerce world, we're talking very specific to the residents. I imagine same for businesses is make sure your governing documents, everything is pretty secure.
Yeah, having been.
I mean, a lot of it's digitized, right? You already got
is.
there, but
back in the day when I was in my own businesses, in the grocery store business, what you don't anticipate is the electricity going down, and then you have a cooler full of
inventory
of raw meats, and then you're trying to figure out what am I going to do with them, because you got to. In many cases, I mean, we'd give stuff away because we didn't want it to rot. I mean, where was it going to go to waste?
Right.
And find out your neighbors, and many times it's your own neighborhood. You're helping your neighbors to be able to get back on their feet, and sometimes it's barbecuing, and make sure you've got all those assets and that you need to survive. And as a businessman, it's sometimes you say, okay, did I have insurance? Did I not? Am I going to be covered? Am I not? In many cases, people don't have lost income insurance because it's costly, which means that if my business closes its door today, I don't have any other income coming in. So it's a matter of balancing.
Well, you mentioned when like residential insurance, if you don't have it by the time that thing hits the goal, would that be the same be said for that type of insurance for businesses?
Commercial and residential run the same. What happens is insurance companies are not going to cover you if there's a threat in the Gulf, because number one is that they're not going to put themselves to possibly have a potential loss if they don't have that already in place prior to the situation.
Are there insurance products like that are seasonal? Like I'm just doing this in advance of hurricane season, and afterwards I don't want to pay the fee.
Usually not, and they know that. And some people I know have done that. The problem is that insurance company that you had is going to remember you next time around. So when you need it the next time,
Gotcha.
you may not be able to. So it's not necessarily the smart way of doing things.
Best business practice.
Yeah,
No. Okay.
yeah. And then the other thing is, like and I was in business when several hurricanes hit, is how did I secure it, and how did I keep my family safe? So commercial, you have your business on one side of town and you live on the other side of town, and then you're trying to the storm's just passed and you're trying to get from one side of town to the other side to be sure, are the windows broken, because people will have a tendency, unfortunately, to go in and make themselves available to whatever's in the store when nobody's there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, hurricane season last season, we were speculating we were due, like it was our time to get some more activity. And we didn't see a whole hell of a lot. We saw some fast at the beginning, some heavy rains, and then it just kind of dissipated into nothingness. I know certainly we're in drought, and certainly we will welcome some welcome rain. Maybe not too much. But what do you feel? What are you hearing? What are they saying about the season?
Last year was one of the worst predictions that we've ever had. So those individuals that are in the world of meteorology, still felt that that was going to be a very active season. And even though it was active to a certain degree, not necessarily active here. The problem that I have is that this year they're anticipating, from what the numbers that I saw, seems less than last year, less activity. But that doesn't mean we won't be devastated.
So then we're going to
by
end up with
hurricane.
more.
We could, we very, yeah, it could, anything can happen in this world. You know it is. You don't anticipate it happens. The thing is to always be prepared. You
Right.
know that at the end of the day, don't rush out. The one thing that I always see people happen, they say, "Oh, there's a hurricane out there," and the next thing you see, they're jam packed in the stores trying to get all the stuff, and yet
Panic buying.
yeah, they get in that panic mode instead of taking care of making sure your family's safe, make sure they have a exit plan, understanding that if during one of the hurricanes from here to Laredo from here to San Antonio, it took 8 hours
Oh my gosh.
to get out.
And
So-
I can only imagine some cars were stuck with no gas and
Exactly.
the chaos.
So
that comes with
that's
that.
the other thing is
Yeah.
be sure that you're filled, your gas tanks are filled. Be sure you have access. Make sure the thing is making sure your family is safe, because there's nothing worse than not knowing that they're okay at the end of the day.
Right. Well, Alex, I want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
We felt that this was important to get ahead of hurricane season, start spreading the word. Is there some resources or online stuff that you want to share?
Well, the main thing is, it's Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group is going to be here toward the tail end of that. And that you'll see a lot of, we do have a website under Corpus Christi Disaster Recovery Group that people can go visit. But if you want real preparedness, go to those individuals that do it on a regular basis, such as the Red Cross. Red Cross is going to be out there. That's what they do every day, day in, day out. There's always a disaster somewhere in the world, and they can assist. Get yourself educated, or if you ever get invited to a hurricane conference, as we've had here in the past, we've already begun doing that educational opportunities, making sure that attend, listen to the seminars, listen to what we're talking about today. Be prepared. Don't be surprised at what happens. And then the other thing is kind of look around. What's going to happen that if something were to happen, my home to be flooded, who's the specialist in the field that can possibly get me back before possibly mold sets in or microbials actually start setting in, so that you don't get caught off guard.
Right. Well, and before we go, there's something I've lived in Corpus maybe collectively 6 years, and I've been lucky enough that during hurricane season there was not a lot. I know you've seen what could happen and what has happened. I guess could you just describe the community spirit and I do know who we are as a community, and I can only imagine that we really come together.
So I was here, and I literally have lived here through every hurricane
Oh my gosh.
since I was born. So, and I'm not going to go back and date myself, but I was here when Hurricane Celia hit, and I saw the devastation where we got literally where houses were gone one day, or people that worked for us at the stores no longer had a place to stay, or crying, and you just don't know what to do. And so, and then not having electricity, and how do you get gas, and how do you get from one location? So I can see the devastation, but I also saw how people were willing to step up and say, how can I help? How can I volunteer? I want to give this, I want to give that. Great. Find out what is needed in the community. Find out what's needed in your neighborhood. Take care of your family first, and find out what's needed in the community. And so many people, they're churchgoers. They have that unit they can go to, and then share, because put aside your prejudices, your differences, and let's move the community forward. And we did. During Hurricane Celia took us a while to get on, because we were probably I know that we were without electricity for probably 2 weeks. And if you can imagine coming home, it just rained, it was very hot, and all of a sudden you have no electricity. And so today's day and age, of course, technology was not where it is today. So imagine your kids not having the ability to have technology accessible. So then you've got to figure out how you're going to keep
Entertain
them
them.
busy.
Yeah.
Entertain them. Go back to checkers. What's checkers? Okay.
Well, Alex, again, I want to thank you for your insights. I want to thank you for sharing these stories. And I especially want to thank you for leading this space, because it is super important in the Coastal Bend
Thank you.
that we get prepared.
Appreciate it.
I also want to thank our audience for joining us, and we will see you again next time.